Hello. Okay, my name is Damar Harleston, and I will be doing my informative speech for week 2. This is my audience. It's my wife. Unfortunately, I do not have 2 adults. I live with my wife, so she is my only audience member. But we're going to get this rolling anyway. So, my informative speech is titled, Bread is Your Best Friend. And it is going to be primarily to inform. I would like to inform people about the function and usage of carbohydrates in the body and how effective they are across the board for so many different things. I feel as though people have a very negative outlook on carbohydrates and what they do for your body and how beneficial they actually are. So that's the purpose of the speech. Okay, so the main idea is, what if I told you that you can enjoy bread and you can have bagels for breakfast and you could eat carbs on a regular basis and they won't make you gain weight in excess. They won't make you overweight. That is the big question for a lot of people, is how many carbs can I eat? What kinds of carbs can I eat? And do I need to cut them out of my diet completely? And the big idea is, what if I told you you don't have to cut them out at all? Right, so that's the main point that we want to get into. The reason I feel like this is significant is I feel like every single person has a way that they would like to look and a way that they would like to feel. That's what fitness is all about. I've been a personal trainer for over 8 years. I've also been a certified nutritionist through AAAI, ESMA, and ASFA. I've been doing this for almost a decade now. I've worked in commercial gyms. I've done training on my own. I've done online coaching, online training. Currently I'm a football coach, a track coach for a high school. I work with athletes. I work with everyday people all the time for years and years and years. And the number one thing that everyone has in common is everyone has a way that they would like to look and a way that they would like to feel. And that desire to look a certain way and feel good about yourself, it accumulates sort of a negative relationship with food. Most people do have a negative relationship with food. They either feel really guilty when they eat foods that they enjoy, and they feel the need to justify those decisions and those food choices to themselves and to other people in order to actually sit down and really enjoy these foods. And we over restrict our diets, and then we sort of reprimand ourselves in the gym after we have a good day, or after we have a day where we enjoy some food that we really, really wanted to eat, or we have a good family day. We go and we give ourselves extra work to burn off those calories or burn off those carbs that we ate. Or we overly restrict our diet in the days to follow for an extended period of time to make up for the time that we spent eating foods that we really love. And that just creates this very negative relationship with food, because then of course you over restrict, then you overindulge, and it's just not a sustainable way not only to live your life, but we have to eat every single day in order to survive. So having this internal struggle with food on a daily basis, multiple times throughout the day, is just not an effective way to live your life. And it's not necessary. It's really, truly not necessary. I think that it's important for people to understand what happens when you consume carbohydrates and how it really affects your body and what the processes are that your body undergoes when you consume carbohydrates, and how and why they are not only the most important macronutrient that we consume on a daily basis, but also your body's favorite. It's your body's favorite. It needs it. There should be no diet where you take out carbs completely and totally, and there should be no diet where you're afraid of carbohydrates. The main point, the number one thing that I think that everyone needs to understand and know is that, firstly and most importantly, carbs are your body's favorite. Hence the title, Bread is Your Best Friend. Carbs are your body's primary and favorite source of energy. So when you eat carbohydrates, this is bread, any sort of grain, oats, oatmeal, rice, noodles, anything like that. Fruit is a carbohydrate. Anytime you ingest any sort of carbohydrates or anything that falls under the umbrella of a carbohydrate in terms of a macronutrient, your body breaks those carbohydrates down, and the chemical substrate of carbohydrates in your body is glucose. That's sugar. and the body breaks that. Technically, it's glycogen. The body breaks that glycogen further down into glucose. So glycogen is the storage form of glucose. Glycogen is a much larger molecule. So it stores glycogen, and it takes a portion of that glycogen and breaks it down even further into readily accessible glucose that it then transfers into your bloodstream. So that's the blood sugar that you have in your body, blood glucose. And that is like gasoline to your body. That is your body's favorite source of energy. That is your body's primary source of energy. Your body gets energy from a lot of different places, but it's always going to access the glucose in your blood first and foremost before you do any sort of exertion or in the middle of any sort of exertion. And it won't access any other form of energy until the blood glucose is utilized. So that's your body's favorite source of energy, and it needs carbs to make that glucose and that glycogen. It needs you to eat carbohydrates in order for that to happen. Brain functionality is also another very, very important aspect of carbohydrates, and it helps your brain to function properly. It helps your body on a hormonal level. It helps regulate your hormones, testosterone, estrogen, serotonin, dopamine. All of the different hormones that your body is regulating throughout the day, it needs carbohydrates and it needs glycogen in order to regulate those hormones, feed your brain, allow your brain to function, allow your memory to function properly, and allow your body to have energy to get through the day. The second point that I would like to address is that there are different kinds of carbs. So there's a lot of different kinds of carbs, which you kind of touched on a little bit. You have breads, of course, you have rice, you have potatoes, you have fruit, we have noodles. There's so many different kinds of carbs. And mathematically, yes, 30 grams of carbohydrates is 30 grams of carbohydrates, whether that 30 grams is coming from a bagel, or it's coming from a cup of white rice, or it's coming from a bowl of noodles. 30 grams of carbohydrates is 30 grams of carbohydrates, but there are different variables at play, and that is where we start to take those things into consideration so that we don't overindulge, so that we get the results that we're looking for in terms of our physique and how we feel, right? Because all these different carbs are made by different things, right? All natural oats are made entirely different than a loaf of sourdough bread. Sourdough bread has dough, sour, yeast. It has flour in it. Flour is a big key component in breads, in noodles, and things like that, that can affect your body differently across each individual. So those are the things we need to take in consideration, and those are the primary aspects of how and when to eat. So the big three sub-points in terms of ingesting and consuming carbohydrates in your diet and making it so that you can eat them regularly is focusing on portion control, what kind of carbs we're eating, and when we're eating them. That's it. You can have and enjoy as many carbs as you like, as in all the types and all the different various types, but how and when can affect how you feel and allow your body to operate more optimally, right? So things like bread are usually most beneficial in the morning when you first wake up. After your body's been dormant in sleep for a number of extended hours and you wake up with low energy, that's the best time to have, a bagel, an English muffin, a few pieces of toast. And we don't want to overindulge, right? Like, we don't need to eat 3 bagels for breakfast. We don't need to do that, right? 1 bagel has approximately 55 grams of carbohydrate. That is plenty numerically to keep your body going for the next few hours. We only want to eat what we need to sustain us for a few hours, and then we refuel. We refuel our body. So we don't want to overindulge. We want to manage portion control. But what kind of carbs we eat is never really, something that we need to take into consideration unless we're taking it into consideration based on how we as an individual feel. All different kinds of carbs affect every single person differently. Some people can eat bread and they don't get bloated. They don't feel heavy. They don't feel stuffed. And some people eat bread and they get the opposite sort of reaction from their body. They feel really bloated. Their body doesn't digest them quickly right? It takes a little bit more for your body to digest it, and that there's nothing wrong with you if that's the case. That's just your genetic coding. That's just the way your body responds to bread. If you don't like the way your body responds to bread, then maybe you specifically should be more mindful about how much bread you consume, and lean more towards something lighter like rice, grain, oats, oatmeal, things like that. But you can still consume bread. That is the biggest misconception, that if you bloat or if you don't like the way you feel after you have a few bagels, then you need to cut bagels out completely. That's not necessary. Moderate, eat less bagels over time, but you can still enjoy bagels if you like to enjoy bagels. Just understand the kind of reaction your body's going to have to that specific stimuli, and then adjust your intake accordingly. And you can still see all the results you want to see. You can still feel great. You can still look great. And your body's going to get what it needs to give you the energy to get through the day, feed and function your brain, and ultimately, help you function more optimally across the board throughout your day. So the biggest key point is that everybody's body is different. Every human being is different. We all have a different genetic coding, and we all respond to different foods in different ways. And the number one thing that I tell my clients is always be mindful. Be mindful of how your body is responding to certain foods. Don't just shovel things into your face and then, wonder why you feel icky or yucky or nauseous, or why, you may have a stomach ache or you may be constipated. Everything has a reason and a rhyme and a reaction. So pay close attention to what you're putting in your body and how your body's responding to that stimuli. And once you do that and you get an idea of how your body responds to certain foods, certain carbohydrates, then you have an understanding of how you are going to respond to different foods and how well you respond to certain foods and how certain foods may affect you negatively. And then you can adjust your intake, your portion control, and your moderation accordingly, and you can look and feel your best. And you can still eat English muffins. You can still have an occasional donut. You can still eat rice with your dinner. You can still do these things, and you just understand how much you can get away with and how much you need to scale back, and how to live your life as comfortably as you possibly can and still enjoy the foods that you want to enjoy.